Hello and welcome to another episode of Building a Better Sefton. Very delighted tonight to have Mike Sammin, who is a newly elected Liberal Democrat. And of course, for our slightly seasoned veterans of this programme, you will know that Crosby holds an important part of history in the Liberal Democrat movement with Shirley Williams' election. I'd like to say a few years ago, but it may be a little bit longer. But Mike, welcome.
Thank you, David.
And we'll go to our first question is, can you explain your current role, obviously as a councillor in a Labour majority council? So as a Liberal Democrat councillor, what are you hoping to achieve for Sefton?
Okay, so I was fully aware that Labour currently have a strong majority on Sefton Council, but I've seen the differences that local Liberal Democrats made in Southport, which is why I got involved, because of the local team. Now, I just thought that we had good ideas, and we looked after small businesses, after migrant workers, for example, looking out for their rights, and looking out for whether it's people in need, people wanting to be entrepreneurs and grow. And I just thought, looking at the stuff they were doing on council, I thought it was a good balance, really. I just thought they generally had local politics in Southport in the heart. So that's why I got involved, really. And I've seen there's lots of differences you can make even when you're not in control of a council. If you'd like, we can go through some of the things that I've done. Maybe that would benefit the whole of Sefton if they would have gone through.
Right. No, so obviously every councillor has a role to play. Could you just sum up Liberal Democrat view, as opposed, because some of the listeners think, there's the Greens, there's Labour, etc. Very quickly, what is it that makes Liberal Democrats distinctive?
The first thing anyone would say is freedom is at the heart of all Liberal Democrats' values, and there's different interpretations of it, but it's generally enabling people to be free to be who they want to be able to achieve what they want to achieve. And sometimes that is maybe the government stepping back and maybe reducing unnecessary regulations and red tape. Or sometimes it might be a case of giving people the support, and that may encourage them. So it's really all about freedom and balancing that with society so that ultimately everyone's happy. And I think that's what we all want, but we've just got different means of going about it.
Right, no, thank you. I think no one would disagree that freedom is absolutely essential in our borough and society generally. If we move now to some of the very big issues in the borough, one is the Bootle Strand.
Yes.
And it was an iconic shopping centre. It's had investment and it's changed. Have you any thoughts on the regeneration that is going on there?
Yes, I've been concerned about the amount of money and the value that the Bootle Strand had lost, but it's now got this opportunity through the through national and regional funding to have more investment, and Bootle does need investment. So I generally do hope the best for it. I'm not convinced that Sefton Council, in its current form, is the best place to maybe take charge of these investments, as we've seen great difficulty in getting the Marine Lake Event Centre in Southport, getting that project up and running. I wish you all the best. I'm not sure really if Sefton Council the current leadership have proven that have got what it takes to make this a success. So I hope it has, but I'm a little bit sceptical. Although, I mean, Sefton have got this national funding now and regional funding, I believe, for Bootle Strand. So we've just got to hope for the best and make sure that we scrutinise the council and make sure all the boxes are ticked. The contractors, that they're all they're all of good standard and quality, and just to make sure that this all goes smoothly, because the whole of Sefton does need it. And this is it is a great opportunity for Bootle, and I've seen that. I'm pleased with the success of the Salt and Tar events. They've sounded like they've been amazing, and more to come with that as well. So it is an exciting time, I believe, for the south of the borough and that part of Sefton. But I'm obviously I'm a bit sceptical that Sefton are really going to make money, which was the original sales pitch for purchasing the Strand. I believe from the council was that this was not going to cost the taxpayer anything because it's all going to pay back, which so far hasn't been the case. So I think as much as and as great as it is to have the jobs and to invest to keep the jobs and that community impact of having a busy shopping Strand, it's not the council ultimately. There's an economic model here, which it has to be economically sustainable, and we can't just do it because Sefton can't just do it because they love the Strand. It has to. The numbers have to make sense. So hopefully, after the investment, then it will then start making money for the council. Hopefully.
No, I think there's some good points there. It's a great, creative, exciting time to move forward and develop the Bootle Strand. But I think you're quite right. Is the Labour majority council capable of delivering and making sure that it's economically viable and not just something else that the taxpayer has to absorb? I mean, I think they bought it for 30 million plus. Mm-hmm. It's now worth 15.
Yeah.
Which is shocking. Time will tell.
It might not necessarily be because it's the Labour Council. It's maybe a question of what's the track record of councils purchasing these type of business of commercial properties and then turning a profit for council of any colour. So it's not just that. I just don't want to say that Labour can't run a business and we can. It's not as I'm saying in general. Is it a good idea for councils to do this kind of thing? Well, if it does turn out to be this great investment, and we've got a thriving community there and then it's making money for the council, then great. But that's the dream, and we hope it happens. But I don't think the track record so far has given me a lot of hope there.
Right. No, that's a good point. Should they venture into this area? Now, another area that the councils have to venture into, which is essential, is children's services. Now, since 2016, Ofsted rated them as inadequate. After many different heads of children's services, many different inspections, we finally saw a little improvement with social care, not so much with education. So what are your thoughts currently about the provision for the children of Sefton, especially SEND?
Well, I think there's still a lot of concerns, and I do listen to the families. I listen to the voice of the families. I know there has been some improvement, and credit is due there to this council who have worked together. They've improved, but I don't think we've not got to the level we need to be. When it comes to children, we need to be excellent. I'm concerned about how it got into the poor state it did, the children's services, and how long it took to make these improvements and how much money that's taken. So I do think that's an area which probably hasn't been managed the best by Sefton Council, but there are signs of improvement, and I really hope, and everybody I'm sure on the council only wishes the best for children's services, because it's got the biggest impact of probably any part of the council for young people. So we all wish it the best. So one of the reasons I think it may have took a little bit longer is I think the overview and scrutiny committees. I'm not on the children's services. I'm on Regeneration and Skills, but they are run. They have a Labour majority on these committees, and it's almost like the council marking their own homework. So it's, even though they've got all the best intentions, I'm sure, I don't think it's an effective model of scrutiny where we've got various overview scrutiny committees on the council for different departments, but they're all got Labour majorities on. So, is that really the best way of scrutinising the council? I don't think it is. I think we need to have more opposition councillors on these overview scrutiny committees. And I can't say if that was the issue with children's services myself, because I wasn't on that committee. But I do think that, I'm surprised it got to as far as it did without putting opposition councillors on the committees.
No, I think that's a very good point, that they seem to be marking their own homework, because that you're not the only one who said that. Can I ask you about your comment on transport costs?
what I said was I asked a question at council on whether it would be better value for money on the council purchasing their own buses rather than using private taxi companies. So there was no, I was not questioning the need to send children to schools. It was just, is it better to do it in-house or outsource to these private companies? And the question I got back from the cabinet member, I thought was quite reassuring, where the council has purchased new minibuses, whereas in the past it was cheaper to use these private companies because I think of the inefficiency of the buses they had. But now, hopefully, with the new model, they might start doing more of it in-house. So that's all. It was just the argument, the question of in-house versus contracted out provision for transport. That's all.
Fair enough. No, and thank you for clarifying that. Some people feel that the transport costs are high because for special schools there aren't enough places in Sefton, and people are travelling to Leyland, Cumbria, because of this. Have you got a view on that?
I'm not on that kind of committee on the council. I'm on Regeneration Skills, and
fair enough. And I do think we need to turn to the government to say we need a heavier investment in SEND provision. And also we are awaiting this consultation, and then there's going to be a new paper out with their ideas about delivering SEND, because many parents up and down the country, especially in Sefton, feel that the SEND provision has been too poor, and there are families who are travelling out of the area because of this. And I do feel children having to do an hour and a half to get to school is not your normal childhood experience where other children can just walk to school around the corner.
Well, I'd love people to get in touch with me. Like, if people are facing that situation, I'd love them to get in touch with me, because the only similar situation I've heard of is where somebody was homeschooling a child, and I couldn't believe it. There was no assessment centre, so they were having to go to Blackpool or something to have their exams, which I thought was ridiculous because there wasn't one in the borough. It was for an autistic child with autism, I believe. But nobody's got in touch with me to say that they've had to transport their kids outside. So if that is the case, and residents, especially in Cambridge Ward, I would like to hear more about that, because if I don't know about those problems, then I need to know, and that way I'll be able to raise it and hopefully add some more pressure and make a difference.
Right. Okay. So obviously, people listening, they know how to get in touch with you because of if they go on the Sefton website, all your contact details are there. Now, if we turn to the last quite controversial issue, is the redevelopment of Southport, especially the theatre that's been knocked down and is being replaced, but also the whole regeneration of a town which 30 years ago seemed to be a place where elderly people retired, and it's a very different place now.
It's a bit different, yes. The Marine Lake Event Centre, I mean, I think the council's got to deliver that, and on budget as well, or as near as possible, because we need an event centre. I can't imagine the town without an event centre. We've knocked down the Floral Hall, and I did question at the time at council. I was surprised that they were doing that before a contract was signed to build the Marine Lake Event Centre, because and I did question, if you go back to minutes, you can see that, is there a risk here that we could be left with a car park or a demolition site if we, after knocking the building down, we can't secure the deal for the new build. So and they assure us, this is not going to happen. The Marine Lake Event Centre, there's big concerns about whether the council can deliver that project. Liberal Democrats have called for a gateway review, which I thought made total sense, but it was dismissed by bad leadership of the council, and they're just ploughing on. Where they're looking for the third contract now. They've signed two pre-contract services agreements with two credible contractors who have both walked away after negotiations, and because apparently it's just going to cost more than what Sefton thought for the plans that they've got. And now they're trying for a third contractor. And how is the third contractor going to be cheaper when, with inflation, costs are only going up? So a third contractor is apparently going to have to come in not only fight against the inflation, which is already, the building inflation is already going up and up and up, and somehow get it down cheaper than the other contractors from the last few years. So I think there's big concerns there, and it's somehow it's got to happen, because that is important. But it's not the only. There's lots with Southport that there's lots that we're very, very positive and proud about and excited about. I think there's just so much going on, and I've even heard people from elsewhere across. I just know that I've had people when I've been outside of Southport, just like taking my son to football matches across that, taking to football across Sefton, and I've had people saying, "Oh, have you been to Southport recently? You want to have a look? When the musical fireworks championships was on, saying it was lovely." And I think there's loads of there's lots to be positive about. We've got the town hall gardens investment going on, which and that's going to be led by that project's going to be led by the victim from last July. So that's going to be nice and heartwarming investment in Southport. I think the bars, the restaurants, the shops, there's always there's more and more popping up. There's investment coming. I see, we've got Southport Pleasureland, or now it's called Adventure Coast. That's had loads of investment as well. Silcox Funland, the arcades. I think there's so much going on, and I think businesses. We've been calling, Liberal Democrats have been calling for a VAT cut for the hospitality sector, because I think one thing in the last couple of years, the last year or so, 18 months or so since we've got a Labour government, I have been concerned about the amount of costs on businesses, with minimum wage going up, the jobs tax, the employees' national insurance going up, possibly footfall, is all over the place, and I really do think the hospitality sector needs a bit more support, because we don't want to see boarded up shops and bars closing after people have put their heart and soul and their lives savings into running their own business. So I do think that there needs to be a bit of some support from the national government on the high street, which whether it's in the form of a business rates or VAT cut or something like that. But I do think to keep Southport thriving, I think events are massively helpful. We are having events, so the more events, the better. It's really difficult, I think, at the moment for a new business starting out. I think you've got an uphill battle, and but there are amazing people who put that effort in, passionate people about the business who make it thrive. But it doesn't just happen by chance. It happens. It needs it's a lot of hard work. I would just like to see the businesses with a bit more support from the government, and then I think that would help Southport thrive. I do.
Right. No, I think that's very wise, because when we speak to many businesses, and especially in the leisure industry, lovely restaurants, shops, retail experiences, but it is a struggle to balance the books. So I think you've got local government and you need national government working together to make sure that the shop and the restaurants actually stay open.
There's also the question of parking, where some people, when this debate happens at council about whether we need to have cheaper or off period of free parking. For example, I do personally think a couple of hours free parking on a Saturday before Christmas would give a good boost, and I think that's a big debate. But I do think the parking issue is, I think there has to be more on cheaper parking, possibly some 3 hours. I think there must be a way to do more, whether it's a few hours. And I think that is another one in the transport as well. There's no longer. We used to have a park and ride in Southport. We don't anymore either. So, there are things around that which I think the council should do.
Yeah, and you're not the only party that's come on here and said about the free parking would boost the local economy, because it's no longer just shopping because you can shop online. It's to give people the experience of going out into the community and enjoying themselves as they shop, as they relax, etc. What do you think is the biggest challenge that Sefton faces?
Okay, yes, the biggest challenge I think Sefton faces at the moment, I'm concerned about the finances. because the last previous municipal year there was a 66 million increase. I think it was around 35% increase in council debt in 1 year. Now, I brought this up at the council, and the leader of the council, Councillor Atkinson, said they've invested, and that's why they've done it. But I was quite alarmed at those figures. I think it's that rate of increase, because it's one thing saying, oh, it's 66 million, but it was a big chunk of it was around 30% of our actual overall debt in the council in just 1 year. So what is it going to be next year? If that rate of increase continues, I think that's very concerning. So I think at the moment, probably the biggest challenge for Sefton on the council sounds like it's the finances to me.
Right, no, fair enough. And again, it is worrying, because I think actually that was televised, that meeting, wasn't it?
Yes, it was live streamed.
Which is a really positive thing for democracy, because I actually watched that as well.
Oh, good.
And I am worried about the finances and will they balance the books. It's great to invest, but if they can't balance the books, what cuts will they make? I was going to say, what are you most proud of? You've been a councillor for 18 months.
Yes.
I wanted to know, what do you think is the thing that you've thought, yes, I am so glad I got elected to do this?
When Sandpiper's Care Centre was closing down, I had a feeling, I didn't know much about it at the time, but I had a feeling that this was something that meant a lot to the people who were there. And I seen there was a lady speaking she did a reel on Facebook, and it was really heart-wrenching. I reached out to her, and I went to see her, and I went and met the people at Sandpiper's before it closed down, and now it's been taken up by a new company, which is amazing. But as it was closing down, it was a really, really emotional sight, because the people who were staying there some of them had really severe physical disabilities, and they were all in the wheelchairs. There was dancing and singing, and there was live music on this closing night, and people had like tears rolling down the cheeks. That the staff were crying, even because they loved working there. And I tried to do as much as I could to raise awareness on this issue by doing press releases, and I did a motion at council, which it got passed after a Labour amendment to thank the staff for everything they've done to try and make sure they get support offered to them who have lost their jobs, but also to have a look for a new respite care centre. And I'm not saying this has happened because of me, but I was just trying to raise this issue as much as I could, and I stayed in touch, and I made some friends now from people who were there. Who stayed there, and then a few months later, I heard that a private company was buying it, and I spoke with them, and I met them just before it opened, and amazingly, they brought a lot of the old residents back and the old staff back as well. And I went and did the official reopening, and it was just, again, a really emotional time, one of the most emotional times of my life, really. Just seeing it, I just never thought I'd see the people and the staff all together again in one building. Sandpiper's Care Centre has got really specialist staff, and it's not something which, once that was, when that had gone, from a short period it was gone, you can't just replace that, because these people, they got to know their residents who had staff with real specialist skills. I don't think there was any building anywhere in the country almost with that variation of knowledge all in one building. Trying to save that, and then just trying to support the residents. And even though it ends up being a private company that saved the day, it was something I was just proud just to campaign, and just to, maybe if I made a tiny bit of difference, then I'm proud of that, because the people there mean a lot to me.
No, good, because I was there when you gave your speech, and it did raise awareness for how important respite is for the families who are caring for disabled people, whether children, adults, and how important respite is, and how Sandpipers did it so well, and then suddenly there was going to be nothing. It makes everybody's lives at home so difficult and so stressful. And it's great that it's come back. Private company, that's another debate, but well done for raising the respite issue, because I think there should be more respite in Sefton.
Definitely.
A lot of our viewers and listeners do raise that, I think with children's services, there's one mum who can't go into hospital because as a single mum, she's got no respite for her child while she actually has a vital operation. But thank you so much for raising that. And it shows the value of being a counsellor. Now, the next or the last question is a difficult one. Sometimes we can live in our own bubble. I think we're all guilty of that. And this is, what do you think your critic would say about the Liberal Democrat and yourself?
About Liberal Democrats locally, I hear people say, "Oh, well, you're not going to control the council." But I know the impact. If you look at what we've done, and we have got plenty of motions passed, which where people from all political parties have voted for. I think the ideas Liberal Democrats have put forward, and the experience we've got in the wider party of running councils up and down the country, I think it's a great, I think it's a great asset and benefit to have us on the council. And I do think that just the fact that we don't control the council, it doesn't mean you can't have a lot of influence. I mean, some stuff that I was pushing for, which it didn't get voted through, but I think that was maybe an issue with maybe the current leadership of the council, because I was trying to get people's, the grass cut because of the social housing. One Vision Housing stopped cutting grass outside homes, which were for elderly and disabled people. So, I was at council making a real case for that, and I hope that I wish that meeting, the recording of that meeting, it was only tested. I wish it could come out, because I was really trying my best to get this. I thought this decision was wrong, and the council could have stood up to One Vision Housing, and that would have benefited people in One Vision Housing, which is like social housing. They're the council's biggest social housing provider, but that would have helped people across the borough. Now, and it was Liberal Democrats who were raising that issue. So, I think that there's lots of issues. There's an app, for example, I've been trying to make difference with cleanliness. You hear a lot of people complaining about, dog muck, people want the streets sweeping more. Well, yeah, so do we. And, I think, the council does need to put more resources into sweeping streets, which, we'll put pressure on to do. But, for example, if we had an app, because the Sefton Council reporting system is so antiquated. If you tried reporting an issue, you have to go onto the website and you've got to click what road it's on and put the address on. But, there's not always a house immediately outside where the issue in the road is, if it's a pothole or something like that. So then you've got to take a photograph, and then you've got to email the council separately a photograph, maybe go on some website, find some coordinates. Some councils, some local authorities, I believe Lancashire County Council have got an app called Love Clean Streets, where residents and councils can just take a photo. It will report the issue to the council and send the image along with the location as well, based off within, I think, a 1 meter square radius. So stuff like that. This is stuff which I've pushed as Liberal Democrat on the council. If Sefton Council didn't have the political format makeup it did have, I think maybe if it was on a different leadership or maybe it was a different party in control, I think a lot of people would look at that and say, yeah, that's a good idea. So, why haven't we done it? They say it's in the plans, but why are we behind other councils when it comes to this? And like with,
No, I think the app's great. Can I ask, sorry, why do you think, though, when it goes to the polls,
yes,
right, people aren't voting Liberal Democrat as much as you want?
Well, in Southport, we're very strong. So I'd say it's on the local elections, because, Liberal Democrats, I think, we generally do have a passion for local politics and pavement politics. I'd say, in the south of the borough, we've got fewer members, fewer activists, and without members and activists and people joining political parties, it's very difficult to grow. Well, once a party gets a bit of success, and then it starts attracting more members, we'll have more events, and then everything snowballs. But we have had difficulty in the south of the borough, but we normally still stand candidates. But I just love more people to join us. So if people wanted like what Liberal Democrats do up and down the country, I think really the best thing, it means so much if you can join the party and just spare a little bit of free time, because things can just get so much better and so much bigger just by having, some extra members per ward. I think that's what we really need, more people involved in local politics, and that way it'll make it different.
Sorry, I was going to say, do you have hopes that you have a Lib Dem MP for Southport?
Well, absolutely, yes. I mean, I joined Liberal Democrats in 2017. It was when Theresa May called the snap general election, and we had a Liberal Democrat MP then, John Pugh, who's now our council group leader, and that made me join the party, because I was like, I want to keep a Liberal Democrat MP in Southport. I just felt like that was the right thing. I think that Southport's done very well with Liberal Democrats, and I think and hope that will come back. But I just say, I've heard people say that we've had some really good Liberal Democrats have always had good councillors and good MPs, and a lot of people think they would like that.
Okay, now just to ask nationally,
yes,
when you went into coalition with the Conservatives,
yes,
with Nick Clegg and David Cameron, some people felt that they didn't get a true Lib Dem vote in the sense of what they voted for and what they got. And I was wondering if the shadow of that coalition has been negative, or do you think people thought it was positive and you've gone on? Because I know you lost MPs because of it after the election, but when you look back at that coalition, what are your views?
I look back at what we achieved, and I think, I know at the time, I remember we increased the personal allowance before you pay tax, which helped a lot of people. There was a green investment bank set up as well. When you look at the achievements, there was a lot achieved. The issue is, it's obviously being a coalition, you have those negotiations, and I know that people often say, "Oh, tuition fees," they'll throw tuition fees at us, and I get that. I think maybe the party at the time, I think that was, I think it was a lesson. I think there's been a lesson there, not to promise something if you're then going to go into coalition. But I think looking at the governments that have been since the coalition, I look back at the coalition and think, that's a lot better than some recent governments we've had. So, I think, I don't think that's a bad mark on Lib Democrats at all. I think we can be proud of what we achieved in coalition. I think as more time goes on, I think history will look back better on it. I think obviously there was a lot of initial anger because I know a lot of people may have voted Liberal Democrat to keep Conservatives out, and then there ended up being a coalition. So I think it's I think at the time there will have been a lot of anger as well, and some of the cuts and austerity, people say it cut too deep, and I wasn't involved at the time, so I can't say whether or not I supported them at the time, because I was just concentrating on my own business at the time and family. I wasn't involved in politics then. But it's I think as time goes on, I think it will look back better at the coalition. I think we've learned a lot as well from that period, and all governments make mistakes, and I don't think it. I don't see this. I don't think there's something there which, when you look at the governments now, I don't see why people would say, "Oh, we can't have Liberal Democrats back in government," because I think there's lots of reasons. If you look at what the MPs are achieving, I think we've got 72 MPs, and the stuff they've been raising in government, I think they've been absolutely in Parliament. Sorry, I think the new Liberal Democrat MPs we've got have been absolutely brilliant, and I really do challenge anyone to if you look at what Liberal Democrat MPs are doing and raising it in Parliament, we've been fighting for the hospitality back cut. We've been against the farmers and family farm tax. A lot for local businesses, for carers as well, and carers a big thing as well with Liberal Democrats. And I think it's and Ed Davey knows well, as he's been a carer himself for a long time. I just think there's lots to be positive about, and I think the coalition. I understand why we got a kicking for it, but I just hope that people can look back and think, actually, there were positives there, and a lot of that could come back. There were said then policies give people more money in their pockets, which I don't think that's happening with the current government. I don't think people are feeling like the current government is doing stuff which is putting more money in their pockets. I think most people are probably feeling like things are getting hard and inflation's a real problem at the moment. And it seems to be that the current government's struggling to get inflation under control. So when inflation's high, I think that hurts everyone. So I think the government's got to sort that and win an election on the backdrop of high inflation. I think that's the price rises in the shops have got to get under control. I mean, the other day I was looking at chocolate in Spar. It was like the average chocolate bar seems to be about £4 or something like that. It was just absolutely insane. Then I had a look, and apparently there's been this big chocolate inflation. But that's a national issue. But it's compounded onto I think some of the policies that this government have done. And yes, there are international reasons for inflation, but then I think this government's compounded it with the way it's taxed businesses and put costs up on businesses. And then that, combined with international causes of inflation, has just meant sky-high prices in the shops, and people don't want to go to the shops. They're scared to go to the shops because they think, they don't know how much money they're going to come out with.
No, you raised some good points, and I think when you look back at the coalition, hindsight and comparisons, I think the student tuition is very, very significant on people in their 20s, 30s now who were at uni, and that again is going to have a different narrative when they're paying back.
I know that because at the time that was my age group. My friends were the ones who were voting Liberal Democrat in 2010 for free tuition fees, and then they're fuming, and it took them years, or they were hurt by that. And I think that was I think the party, it shouldn't have made a promise that it couldn't keep the way it did. So, and I think there was big think and hope there's big lessons learned from that. But I just think that there's too much good things have come from Liberal Democrat MPs that I don't think we can be held over that for forever. I think the further away we get from the coalition, I think the more we can see why it's important, why Liberal Democrats are useful in government. I think the economy as well, and getting there's another part to it where I do like the government to have a good control over the public finances. And I think I think that fiscal responsibility aspect, I think you've got to have balance. I think balance is absolutely key. Whereas all parties, similar goals, but I think you've got to have balance in politics. And that's what ultimately I like about Liberal Democrats. I think in most arguments, there's a lot of greys. I think a lot of arguments aren't black and white in politics. And I think Liberal Democrats are very good at getting down to the crux of the matter and, working out what's the most practical, best way forward in most situations of crisis. So and I think it ultimately ends up with quite a balanced economy. It's not got really high taxes, or it's not got a lack of support for people in need either. So I think that balance, which I think Liberal Democrats, which is a core point really, because an unbalanced society and economy, it's not going to be good. So I don't think the answer is being like left wing or right wing. I think it's just it's having the ability to look at look at the problems and the solutions, and look at what people want and how best to achieve that. And I think that way of decision making, which I think Liberal Democrats are good at nationally and locally, I think that's something which that's another reason why I support Liberal Democrats, because I think they're quite they're quite balanced in most of the views.
Right. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Obviously, the big test always is the public, isn't it?
Yes. Of course.
They get the final say. They mark the homework in the sense. So you've got the big elections in May.
Yes.
Locally, and then of course we move to a national election whenever that will be. But can I just say thank you so much for coming on to talking about your work, and especially the work with sandpipers, and also your vision of the Liberal Democrats. So thank you very much.
Thank you, David. You're welcome. All the best. Cheers.
Okay.